There's another type of test I skipped. Laravel also offers a browser testing package called Dusk. This allows you to actually interact with your web application. While Laravel is a full-stack framework, its primary focus is the backend. As such, we'll only write a few Dusk tests in this video course. Nonetheless, it's important to be familiar with all the testing tools available as your use cases and application evolves. Laravel Dusk runs your application in the browser and performs actions and assertions to verify its behavior. If you've ever used a tool like Selenium, Dusk is pretty much the same thing. It wraps all the functionality in an expressive, fluent API. By default, Dusk runs a headless version of the Chrome web browser. It's pretty slick, so let's see it in action. Dusk is an official Laravel package. I'll add it to the project by running composer require --dev Laravel Dusk. Once this finishes, I'll install Dusk by running php artisan dusk install. This creates a few files within the test folder. First, it creates a base Dusk test case class used by Dusk tests. Just like the test case class, this creates the application for testing. It also configures the Chrome WebDriver. In addition, the install creates a browser subfolder to store the Dusk tests. Underneath the browser folder are a few different folders, most notably the screenshots folder. Anytime a Dusk test fails, it captures a screenshot of the browser. This is a way to see the state of the browser and helpful for resolving issues as you write Dusk tests. Dusk also creates an example test. We see it extends the Dusk test case. It also has an example test case, which visits the root of the application and verifies the text Laravel is displayed. We can run Dusk tests with the command php artisan dusk. Right now this test is failing. If I look at the screenshot, I see the browser loaded the default Apache web page. That's because I don't have a site set up for this new Laravel application on my local web server. To resolve this, I can change the app URL in my .env file to the built-in web server address and port. I'll then open a new terminal and run php artisan serve in the background. We can see the application running on the built-in web server, and there's that Laravel text. When I run the Dusk tests again, everything passes. For fun, I'm going to comment out the configuration to run the Chrome browser as headless and run the Dusk test again. We actually see really quickly it bring up a real Chrome browser window and load the application. Again, this is pretty cool and provides a way to test your Laravel applications within the browser. With that said, by their very nature, Dusk tests require more setup and are slower to run. As such, I don't recommend testing your entire application with only Dusk. Now, let's go ahead and create a quick Dusk test. I'll write a test which loads the root URL and clicks the external link to GitHub and assert it loaded the Laravel project on GitHub. To create this test, I'll run the built-in artisan command, artisan dusk make GitHub link test. Since Dusk tests are more about testing the behavior of your application, the naming is a little bit more open. So instead of mirroring the application structure and class names, I typically name them by the feature I'm testing. Of course, I'll still suffix them with test to follow the default configuration. When I open the GitHub link test, I see it automatically generated the proper class and extended the Dusk test case. It also generated an initial example for us. I'll follow Laravel's convention by updating this Dusk test case to use an annotation and updating its name to be a bit more descriptive. In this case, I'll call it links to Laravel project on GitHub. Similar to the HTTP request object, Dusk provides a browser object which has dozens of behavioral methods and assertions. Let's jump back to the documentation and review the Interacting with Elements section. I immediately see this click method, but with a little more scrolling, I find a click link method, which accepts the text of the link to click. So that's the behavior we need. Let's go back and look at the available assertions. I find assert URL is, which verifies the current URL matches the given URL. Perfect. Now I'll go back to the test case and fill these in. I'll start by visiting the root URL. I'll then click the GitHub link and verify the URL changed to the Laravel project on GitHub with assert URL is. I'll run the test again and everything passes. There's one final thing about Laravel Dusk. Right now we're using the same configuration as our application. You'll likely want to configure Dusk a bit differently. Instead of using PHP unit configuration, Dusk has its own .env. It will look for a .env.dusk.environment file. When the file exists, Dusk automatically copies it over the .env file. I'll demonstrate this by changing the app URL back in the .env file. Then I'll create a copy of the env file named .env.dusk.local. I can now configure the app URL for Dusk in this file. Notice when I run the test again, everything still passes. That's because Dusk recognized the current environment as local and loaded the configuration in the .env.dusk.local file.